March 2009. Bagram airfield, America's most secure base in Afghanistan. 4 SAS operators are turned away at the gate. 40 minutes later, they are 800 meters inside the perimeter. No fence was breached, no sensor was tripped. This was not the first time. The official log at Bagram's main gate records the refusal at precisely 0800 hours. 4 British soldiers in civilian clothing, credentials checked, access denied. 40 minutes pass. Inside the perimeter, 800 meters beyond the gate, a patrol spots the same 4 men walking calmly toward the Special Operations compound. No alarm, no breached fence, no unexplained sensor activation. The base commander's report confirms it, every physical barrier intact, every electronic system green. Guards at the outer fence maintain that no one crossed. The interior security teams confirm all vehicle gates remained locked. Yet the presence of the SAS team is undeniable, logged by 2 independent patrols and entered into the incident register at 0844 hours. The distance from the main gate to the Special Operations compound is not trivial. Across open ground, through controlled corridors, under constant surveillance. No trace of forced entry, no explanation offered. The question of how remains unanswered. For the US security apparatus, this was not an isolated embarrassment. It was the latest in a series of incidents that defied both logic and protocol, raising a problem no one could yet solve. Kandahar airfield, January 2002. 4 British soldiers, later identified as Special Air Service, were discovered inside a restricted ammunition depot at 2 in the morning. They had bypassed 2 separate checkpoints. The guards, questioned later, insisted that no one had passed their posts. No alarms sounded, no security footage captured their approach. The only evidence was the presence of the men themselves, logged by a US officer and recorded in a Stars and Stripes photo from that night. In 2004, US commanders responded to a series of similar anomalies by rolling out biometric fingerprint readers and RFID-tagged vehicle convoys. The upgrades were meant to eliminate gaps, especially after a string of unauthorized vehicle movements at several bases. Yet the pattern continued. Special Air Service teams were still appearing in secure compounds, often without a trace of how they got inside. In June 2005, at Camp Phoenix in Kabul, a Special Air Service sergeant entered a classified planning conference, sat unnoticed for nearly 15 minutes, and was only identified when an American colonel realized his name was missing from the roster. The timing matched a shift change at the gate, but no record showed his entry. Between mid-2006 and early 2008, the incidents multiplied. 4 major US installations, Kandahar, Bagram, Camp Phoenix and Camp Bastion, all logged unauthorized penetrations. Each after-action report reached the same conclusion. Perimeter secure, no breach detected. Yet British special operators present inside the wire. Investigators ran out of explanations. The mystery deepened, and the list of unanswered questions grew longer with every incident. David Sterling's original SAS blueprint, written in the chaos of 1941, called for small teams to move behind enemy lines with little more than their wits, and a mandate to get in, get out and leave no trace. That founding doctrine, who dares wins, still shapes every phase of SAS training. Selection is designed not just to test endurance, but to filter for those who can disappear and reappear wherever the mission demands. Modern candidates spend weeks in the Brecon Beacons learning to navigate terrain and bypass both natural and man-made obstacles. The final phases, known as counter-ingress, are unapologetically blunt. Candidates are tasked with breaching friendly lines, slipping past sentries and gaining access to denied areas without detection. According to a senior British officer, if an operator can't outsmart his own side's security, he'll never survive behind enemy lines. This mindset isn't about disrespect. It's about proving that access problems are meant to be solved, not accepted. Autonomy at the small team level is not a privilege but a core expectation. For the SAS, the ability to move unseen, even among allies, is as fundamental as marksmanship or fieldcraft. What might look like rule-breaking from the outside is, in their eyes, the logical outcome of a doctrine that prizes initiative above all else. United States-based security in Afghanistan, shaped by joint publication 305 and the full-spectrum dominance model, rested on a belief in technology and procedure. Perimeter defense meant more than fences and guards, it meant biometric checkpoints at every access point, RFID tags on every vehicle, and a unified command chain that tracked movement in real time. At Camp Bastion in August 2007, these safeguards faced an unanticipated test. United States aerial surveillance detected an armed vehicle within 50 meters of the base's outer wire. The response was immediate, a full base alert, helicopter gunships on standby, artillery crews at their stations. Sensors and patrols had been calibrated to trigger this level of reaction at the slightest anomaly. Yet the presence of a British Special Air Service patrol so close to the perimeter, without any record of entry or breach, left the security doctrine exposed. The incident forced a reckoning. For United States commanders, every layer of electronic and procedural control was supposed to guarantee that no one could slip through unnoticed. The Bastion probe proved that even the most advanced system could be outmaneuvered by an ally operating on a different logic. In the aftermath, United States officers pressed for answers, convinced that coalition security depended on strict adherence to established rules. The clash at Bastion became the flashpoint that would soon draw formal policy lines between partners. The directive arrives stamped with the authority of United States Central Command, its language direct and final. Effective immediately, all non-US Special Operations Forces, specifically including the United Kingdom's 22nd Special Air Service, are subject to the following access controls. Each clause lands with the force of a legal sentence. 72 hours written notice is required before any operator from the United Kingdom's 22nd Special Air Service may approach a United States-controlled installation. Entry, if granted, demands a continuous escort by a designated American security officer. No member of the Special Air Service may enter a restricted area, such as operations centres, intelligence vaults or armories, without explicit written authorization from the base commander. Commanders retain the right to deny access at their sole discretion with no appeal. Violations trigger administrative reprimand and may result in revocation of coalition status. The classification note reads, "Distribution restricted for official use only." The blacklist is no rumour now, it is policy, enforceable by order, and it redefines the boundaries of trust on every base in Afghanistan. On October 5, 2007, the British government delivered a formal note verbal to the US Embassy in Kabul. The protest called out the new access restrictions as a direct threat to coalition interoperability, warning that the blacklist undermined the very foundation of joint operations. British diplomats argued that the record of the SAS in Afghanistan had earned trust, not suspicion, and they pressed for an immediate review. The Foreign and Commonwealth Office correspondence, stamped confidential, questioned whether such a policy could ever be enforced without damaging Allied cooperation. CENTCOM offered no public reply. The directive remained in force, but the question of how, if at all, it could be made to work hung in the air, unresolved. Today, coalition bases face threats far beyond friendly friction. The lesson endures. Without true alignment, even allies remain strangers behind the wire. Security isn't just hardware, it's understanding.